Hey y'all, Rob here with ATX Legal, and today I am not going to tell you how to pass your standard field sobriety test. That was clickbait. I'm sorry you fell for it. Why? Because you can't pass it. It's not a pass-fail test, and the officers will even tell you that if you ask. A lot of my clients will say, look, I did great. You cannot pass that test. What you really can think of it as is a video that the police are making that they can play in front of the jury and say, look how intoxicated this person is. And that's really the long and the short of it. Now, we're going to go into the ways that they make it seem like a science, but it's really not. It's really just a video where they can parade you in front of the jury and say, look how intoxicated this person is. The police take these 8-hour classes. That makes them a quote-unquote expert, so they can testify as to why these tests show intoxication. But these tests have been around for years and years and years. You saw the thumbnail at the beginning of this video. That's a painting from the 1800s where they were doing this test. So it's been around forever, but the police will want the jury to think that these are really scientific tests that have been proven with independent studies. And the first test we're going to talk about is the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, or the HGN test. This is the one you see with the pen, and they ask you to follow with your eyes, not your head. And a lot of people think, oh, they're just seeing if I can follow the pen. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a jerkiness of the pupil as your eye goes back and forth. It's an involuntary thing that does happen when you're intoxicated. The problem with this test I found is there's no video evidence of the test. So if the police officer says that he sees that jerkiness, the nystagmus, as he's tracking the pupil, then his word goes. So there's really no way to cross-examine the officer. He's just going to say, yes, I saw it, and there's no real evidence to show, yes, he saw it, or no, he didn't. So yes, it does exist. It is a good, reliable indicator of intoxication. However, when police officers use it, there's really no way to check them to make sure that they're doing the test properly. And next, we're going to talk about the walk and turn test. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is the one where they're going to have you walk on a straight line, real or imagined. Sometimes there will be a line. Most of the time, they'll say, hey, imagine a straight line. Now, this is one of those that you're not going to be able to pass all 8 of these clues, whether you're sober or not. And I'll go over what these clues are. Like I said, there are 8 of them. And any one of these clues is going to be a sign of intoxication. Usually they're looking for like 3 clues. But let me just kind of go over them, and then we'll talk about them individually. The clues are if the suspect cannot keep his or her balance during instructions, starts too soon, stops while walking, doesn't touch heel to toe, steps off the line, uses arms to balance, performs improper turns or turns incorrectly, or takes an incorrect amount of steps. So I want to kind of focus on a few of these that don't seem to be signs of intoxication at all, because they rely on the person hearing the instructions from the officer and doing those. So, and I'm talking about taking the right number of steps. He's going to tell you to take 9 steps. Are you going to remember that? Are you going to think that's important and part of the test? Probably not. Are you going to turn correctly? They tell you this way to turn where you sort of inch your feet around. It doesn't really make any sense. And if you don't follow their instructions on that, that's going to be another clue. Another one is starts too soon. Like if you're on the side of the road, the police officer's conducting this test, you're probably nervous. You might just think you can start the test. That's going to be one of the clues. So there are a lot of these that they sort of design the tests so that you will fail. I think a lot of people will fail that, whether they're stone sober or they're intoxicated. And the officers often spit out these instructions rapid fire. You're obviously scared that you're going to be arrested. You're not really wanting to pay attention to these things. They know what they're doing. They're setting you up to fail. That's why, as we'll talk about later in the video, the best thing to do is to refuse to take these tests at all. And the next one we're going to talk about is the one-leg stand. That's another one that most people know about, where the officer is going to ask you to put your leg in front of you while you stand on one leg for 30 seconds. Now, this is another one where you could mishear some instructions, and they're going to count that as a clue, like if you don't keep your legs straight out in front of you. A lot of people naturally put their hands out for balance. That's another clue. He is looking for 4 clues on this one. Putting your foot down before the test is completed, swaying, hopping on one foot to try and maintain your balance, and then, like I said, using your arms for balance. Even in the best of times, the scientific community that's trying to give this test some legitimacy says that it is only effective 65% of the time. So if you're in that 35%, which is basically more than 1 out of 3 people who gets misidentified by this test, you could be considered intoxicated even though you're not. Could be a reason you go to jail. Yeah, maybe you can fight it in court later, but it's still going to be a major inconvenience in your life. And they're basing that decision on a test that, in the best of times, is 65% accurate. Not to mention the fact that you're nervous. It could be raining, it could be cold, windy, a lot of adverse factors that are going to actually impact that test, so it's not even 65% accurate. And those are the 3 main tests they use. There's a 4th test that is occasionally used in Travis County. It's called the Romburg test. And what the officer will do is ask you to close your eyes, tilt your head back, and estimate 30 seconds. And you're supposed to tell the officer after 30 seconds has passed, or after you believe 30 seconds has passed. Now, a lot of people mishear the officer here, and they think that the officer is going to stop them at 30 seconds. And of course, the officer will count that as a clue. If you are way off in the time, then that's going to be a clue as well. Usually when someone's very, very intoxicated, they're not going to be able to measure time very well. And it can be a legitimate sign, but in those close cases, usually the officer's trying to get you to trip up or show some balance issues when you're putting your head back with your eyes closed. And the bottom line is, when the police officer asks you to do these field sobriety tests, just refuse to do them. And when they ask you, it won't seem like they're asking. They're going to tell you to get out of the car. They're going to do it in the form of commands. Do this. But you do have the right to refuse, and you should refuse. What I generally advise people is, if they've had 0 alcohol in that entire day, go ahead and go straight to the breathalyzer test. It's okay to do those breathalyzers if you've had no alcohol. If you've had even 1 alcoholic beverage that day, don't do the breathalyzer test either. Just refuse the field sobriety test, refuse the breathalyzer. You probably will get arrested, but you're going to have a better time fighting your DWI in court, and there's going to be a much less chance of having that DWI conviction on your record. Of course, nothing in this video is legal advice. It's for educational purposes only. If you would like legal advice on your particular matter, you can give us a call or visit us at atx.legal.